On today's episode, we are joined by Norm Cowie, the Director of Credit for Paramount EO, an electrical distributor. He also is a longtime member, columnist, and speaker for NACM, having also served as a member of its board of directors. He credits NACM's golf outings for helping him improve from being a horrible golfer to a pretty bad golfer. And in his spare time, he writes novels, and he has written 13 books to date. So come along with us as we dive deeper into his journey as a credit professional. Thank you, Norm, for coming on to this new podcast that we're doing with Careers in Credit. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to do this. And for those who don't know about the podcast and what it's supposed to be, it is supposed to be a way to bring people into the know about careers in credit, as a lot of times people, when they hear credit, they don't really understand or know what that might entail. Me being one of them. I'm a marketing coordinator at NACM Connect, and I don't know that much about credit, but I'm willing to learn from the experts like you, Norm, and then others around. So if you're interested in joining onto the podcast, please let us know, and we'll love to get an episode of one of you very, very soon. But Norm, how are you doing today?
I am doing very Friday-ish. So
great.
I mean, and Fridays are good because Mondays are when you have everyone starting up the week, and Fridays everyone's starting to get ready for the weekend. So that's a good time to catch up for me on things. So it's a good day for me.
Yeah, Fridays are definitely, I think, everybody's favorites as the weekend comes around, and you can just hopefully relax after that. And well, then Monday comes around, and then you're back into the rotation of things. But it's good to know that you're doing well. I just wanted to kind of get a snapshot of your journey in the, what you've done in the credit industry, as I know you have lots of experience and you have many years that you can cover and things like that. And I just want to know, where are you right now currently? What are you doing today?
Today I'm director of credit for a company called Paramount EO, which is an electrical distributor. And I've been with this firm since we had a merger approximately 12 years ago with another firm. So two electrical distributors got together. And with the first distributor, I was with them since 1989. So my time with this company has been a very long time now.
Yeah, I know that you also, for those who get the Credit Connections newsletter, Norm also writes a few articles in there about his experiences and with lien law and things like that. And as I've been newer onto the team, I've been able to read your pieces and now getting to talk to you about your experiences. And just to know that there's been such a long time of just history and, like you said, even, merger and how that impacts like the different aspects of the business and everything in between. And so how did you get into credit? Because again, as I mentioned before, it's not really something that people know about, or like they don't go to school to study about it. They're just kind of thrown into it. And just wondering, how did you get into that?
Yeah, I didn't take a single class on credit in college. You don't go to one and have credit manager, 101 or credit manager 102, or you don't have anything like that. For me, when I was in college, I went to Western Michigan, and I was taking marketing and advertising, so what you're in. And I thought I wanted to do that because I have some artistic ability. I like to create things, and I thought that would be the place for me. And then the more I learned about that, the more I thought that marketing is more of a manipulation of trying to get people to buy something that they didn't intend on buying. And it kind of got me, so I wasn't as interested in doing it. But by the time I made that realization, I was already a senior, and I graduated graduated a semester early. So I was kind of thrown into I have to find a job now. I'm done with college. I graduated with all kinds of honors and everything. But I didn't come out of college knowing what I wanted to do. So I just simply started looking for a job. And back in those days, you didn't have the internet or anything. So you just had newspapers and the want ads. And I found a want ad for a finance company. And I had taken a lot of finance in college, including, 500 level classes in finance. I always enjoyed it, but I never saw that as being a place where I would end up going. Um, so, so when I saw this ad for a financial company, it was a personal finance, not a corporate finance. Uh, I took a chance and I got an interview and I ended up getting the job with them. So that's how I got into the credit field, was actually entering into personal credit instead of commercial credit.
Right. And every story that I hear is, yeah, I didn't go to college for it. I There's not a college course or even like a hint of credit in any of these things, at least from what I understand. And as you said, I am in marketing and yeah, I'm also in the credit industry as well. And I would never have thought that I would be now, but glad that I am. And so interesting how like you went from marketing and then you're like, man, maybe finance, and now specifically credit. And can you just explain again for those who do know and who are in the industry, of course, know what a credit manager does and how it impacts businesses, and but for those who are kind of like me, who don't know much but want to learn more, what does the credit department of a business say within in your company? What is their function? Why are they so important and why does it matter?
Well, it's important because everyone knows that you have to grow your business, and to grow your business, you have to you have to find customers, and particularly in a business like we're in now, we're selling to electrical contractors mostly, builders and other things, but mostly electrical contractors. And relationships create most of that. And that's what salespeople do. They create relationships. They take the person for lunch. They handle their problems. They find what they need, and all of that. Uh, so you look. That's one thing you can grow your business. So somebody starts buying from you, and you have to they want credit, because they're not able to pay for the material at that point, and they're going to be paid by another party in a lot of cases. So they have to try to collect money from someone else in order to pay you. So the reason the credit person is important is the credit person has to assess that and determine whether or not the party that's trying to get credit is worthy of getting credit, whether or not you can give them terms. Because everyone wants credit. If you look at any kid out of college, sure, they would love to have they would love to have credit cards and loans for their cars and everything like that. But credit departments are the ones that determine who can qualify to have credit terms, where you allow them to have the material before they pay for it. And that's very, very important. And it's important to do it with people that can make the decisions of what would be a good credit risk. A salesperson would not be that person because they just want the sales. They want the sale to happen. So you need kind of a balance for that. So the credit department is a balance for the sales. And credit departments, smart credit departments, are ones that know how to accept risk and find ways to sell to people with risk. There are tools that you can use to sell to somebody that might not be as credit worthy. And that's what a credit department has to figure out, is how can I, not just only sell to the very best credit worthy people, but also sell to the ones that aren't as credit worthy, but you still need the sales. You still need to build and grow the sales. So a credit department has to be able to gather information. They have to be able to understand the credit viability of the person that's trying to get the credit or the company that's trying to get credit. And they have to collect the money once the money goes out the door. So if we're dumb enough to approve it, then we have to collect it.
Yeah, and you mentioned obviously credit is all about assessing the risk of who gets the money or who doesn't, and um, what are some ways that you would how do you do that? How do you you know properly assess a company to grant them what they need? And I'm sure there's been times where maybe it wasn't the right call, like you said. If you're gonna allow these things to happen, you also have to collect the money. And so is has technology really helped improve that, or is it just like as you have the use of experience, you have this intuition, this gut feeling, or just like these nuance like little details that you would pick up as someone who's been longer in the industry versus like someone who's maybe been only for 2 years doing these kind of sort of things. So I'm just curious, like, how do you assess, and what are you maybe your processes and things like that?
I have a lot of tools for doing it. I one of the best tools I have is I'm in a credit group with all of my competitors, and if somebody is going to give me an application for credit, they're going to give me 3 or 4 credit references on there. They're going to give me the ones that are good. What they're not going to give me are the ones that aren't good. So if somebody has them on hold, if there are liens or suits against them or anything like that, they're not going to be upfront about that because they want me to approve credit. So I have to, it's like I said earlier, I'm an information gatherer. I have in my credit group, if somebody comes to me for credit, I can send an email out to all of my competitors, and they can all respond and let me know whether or not they have an account for that customer or not. And we're all very responsive. We know that we value each other because if it's our competitors, we really value each other. So NACM really helped me by having this group. And so I can find out who they're buying from already and see how they're getting paid by those. Another source I have is I do check on whether or not an applicant has suits or liens or tax liens, foreclosures, anything like that against them. So I have a source for that. So I check their history. I can pull an Experian report to see, or an NACN trade report to see whether or not other people have anything with them. If somebody has Guarantee B account, if they're a new account, I absolutely require a personal guarantee. If they're new in business, under 2 years, and then I would ask for financials at the same time with it. But with the personal guarantee, you might as well see if those are good. So I pull a TransUnion report on them, see whether or not that report is good. So I have a lot of sources that I can go to give me credit information on somebody. Um, and you asked about how technology today helps me. Um, Technology is very good and very bad. When it comes to an applicant for credit, there are a lot of scamsters out there who can give you a credit application where they might actually be frauding by using a real company name, but changing things slightly in the emails and things. So, so having the internet can hurt in that way because it helps people commit fraud. But on the other hand, that same internet is a way for me to check to see whether or not that's fraud. Most credit managers develop kind of a spidey sense. When we get a credit application, we'll have like an uneasy feeling about it. And what I've told people is that uneasy feeling is your brain seeing something there, and you just haven't connected with what it is yet. So there's something there, maybe your brain is caught, and now you need to figure out what that is. And it might be looking at an email, at the email address to see if it's right. I would, I had one case, a college applied for credit with me, and everything looked normal. Everything looked good. Except the email kind of made me a little bit suspicious. So I went onto the internet, so here's the internet helping me, found the college and found the person in the college that I needed to talk to. And when I called them, I also saw that the email addresses that they had for the college were substantially different. But still, the original applicant had one that looked like it could be real because it had the EDU in there, like education in there as part of the thing. But it was not the same address as what was being used by the college. So it was a completely fraudulent credit application. And when your spidey sense tells you there's something out there, there's something there. You just need to dig into it till you can find it. And I'm kind of geeky about things like that. I love doing this stuff. I love doing this investigation. I love finding things like this. And I think that's the kind of person that should be a credit person, should be a credit manager. Somebody that loves to dig into things, loves to explore things, loves to figure things out, loves to accumulate information, loves to learn. And I think that's the kind of person that's a credit person.
Yeah, you mentioned the spidey sense. It's like you're playing that part, like you have the intuition, and then you have like the Batman detective, um, trying
Well,
to put all
mostly
the
the
clues together.
superheroes, but there's something there though.
Yeah, yeah. Just with your experience with, say, with scams and people trying to take advantage or using the emails and that are not quite there's something off about it, right? But you're vetting it through this, by using the internet and going to the site directly. As for those who are also curious about more of what I have done and still are doing, I'm a little bit more versed in cybersecurity, and that as I'm learning the industry, the cybersecurity practices, and like the way that people are trying to use AI and things of that nature to scam people and to, I don't know, credit card, frauds and things like that, and everything that has to do with money and just the technology is becoming even more prevalent and harder to maybe even discern from like an actual real, credible email or contact or whatever it might be. I mean, we're all vetting everything that comes in our inboxes and things like that, and let alone now within the credit, when you have these larger businesses who might need, money being approved and this and that, and companies like making sure that those things are true and valid and authentic, I think is a big thing. And so I from my understanding is that a lot of your job is proving authenticity within a client or within an individual.
Yeah, I
And
had somebody apply for credit with me, and they used 3 different companies that I used for references, and, I got a little suspicious in this one too. Uh, Part what made me suspicious was one of the references claimed they opened credit 2 years before the company existed, and as I checked out the references some more, I found out that 2 of them were other businesses owned by him, and I then learned that one of the credit references that was written by his wife, who was using her maiden name to do it. So it's like, people can check that one there. They weren't trying to commit fraud, I don't think, but they were trying to deceive me into opening credit for them. And when I caught them on it, they got angry with me about it, believe it or not, and said, we're not we're not committing fraud or anything. And I said, well, the thing is with a credit person is trust. And if I can't trust you, I can't give you credit. As simple as that. And when somebody's going to deceive me to get credit, then, he violated that, the very first term, that I have is trust, Tell me the truth. If you filed bankruptcy, tell me you filed bankruptcy. I've opened accounts that I've filed bankruptcy before. I've opened up accounts where I've had opened up accounts that I sent to collections. I sued, that I've reopened afterwards. I'm willing to do things if I can make it work, but being honest is the absolute very first thing on my list.
this podcast is brought to you by Careers in Credit. If you're an employer looking for top talent, or if you're seeking exciting career opportunities in the credit industry, Careers in Credit has you covered. They offer a range of outstanding job listings from excellent employers ready to hire. As an employer, you can effortlessly create and edit job postings, email your listings to relevant job seekers, and set up resume search alerts to find the perfect candidates for your team. Plus, you can view and print reports and statistics to keep track of your hiring progress. If you're on the lookout for your next career move, explore the vast array of opportunities available at Careers in Credit. So, get connected today by visiting careersincredit.org, and your next great hire or career opportunity starts here. Yeah, I mean, they do say honesty is the best policy. I just find that so funny. As you were mentioning, I was just kind of laughing in my head about that whole little situation about having his wife use his maiden name. And it's like the 2 other companies are also still owned by him. And I can see people like kind of already have like, and you said, and what you're saying, like you're willing to do what it takes, as long as you're being honest and willing to give credit, of course, within certain, parameters and things like that. But ultimately, that's the principle of it. And yet people already have set themselves up for failure by just not being honest, especially, with your credit guy who's going to give you that credit. And now you're already starting the whole relationship off with not the greatest start. And I just find that kind of humorous, uh, in a way when you look back on it. I'm sure when it happened, you're just kind of scratching your head like, "What's going on?" This is very interesting, and when you call them out, nicely and cordially, but they get pretty defensive, and it's like, "Well, that's actually not what I was going for." Um, and I find these stories just very, very, um, entertaining and interesting, but also, educational in that sense. I was gonna ask, has AI has that been anything that's really been an issue of late? Or, maybe you've heard in the industry that it has been kinda causing problems, or has it anything around that just as that's such a hot topic now is AI and what is it's emerging?
Yeah, let's have topic because it's a very scary thing. A lot of times with scams, you can kind of tell the scam because it's a foreign scam, and their language isn't until their first language isn't English, and you can catch things in how they phrase something or misspell something or something like that. The thing is with AI, that'll clear that up, so it's gonna be harder to catch that kind of thing. If somebody uses a fake credit reference, what if they go on the internet and they create a presence that I go onto it and like remember the college, I went onto the college website and then found the people I needed to talk to. What if they made one of those so sophisticated that that they actually copied and created one that would be enough to fool somebody on things. So I'm very afraid of what technology will do going forward on things. And bear in mind when I started in credit, uh, all of our collections were done by phone calls, and by letter. We would mail letters to them, or we'll phone them and leave a message. They did have voicemail, so I'm not that old, so we could leave messages for them. But that was even before faxes. Faxes didn't exist at that point. So how did you do credit inquiries back then? How did you do collections back then? And then as technology takes us through faxing, and it takes us through emails, and now it's got AI, it just keeps expanding, and you have to try to keep up with it because the scammers are going to do it. Like there's one thing with credit card fraud, for example, that I hesitate to speak about, that I'm able to determine whether or not a credit card is fake. Uh, but I'm hesitant to really make a big deal about it because I don't want them to ever learn it and then fix it, because it is something that they fix and then make their credit fraud even more viable than what it is right now.
Right. Yeah, it's, not just for the artists who are like, "Oh, I'm worried about my AI art and this and that," but it's also to, like, the real consequences of the world, which is money and identity and like you said, blurring like, it's kind of fixing that problem with those who are not English being their first, language, and now here's a great tool that you can just use, and it corrects all those mistakes, and someone who studied cybersecurity, it is I mean, there's definitely deeper levels to how we can vet and authenticate, like, true things, but the internet is a global and being billions of people, it's hard to facilitate all of that and to, keep track and tabs on those things. So it's definitely our job, not just as a credit leader or a manager, but as individuals to keep on the know about the technology that we're using and how it's impacting our lives in the business. It's just always a fascinating topic to me. I can talk technology all day, um, just because it impacts our lives so greatly. And I'm always wondering, was there ever be a time where we just, for the sake of truth and facts and I guess again the word authenticity, go back to paper, um, and the phone calls, and just keep it that way, and it takes longer, but we know it's gonna be real, and I'm wondering if that will ever go back. I don't see it doing that, but I'm wondering if it gets so bad that that's kind of what we're having to do.
Yeah,
But
if the internet explodes on us, maybe that would be something that where if it, yeah, I watch enough sci-fi and things like that, where you see uh, how AI, decides that if humans are a problem, and and I know that the people who are in big tech have warned us against AI. They said there have to be parameters, there have to be protections, and any protections that we put into place here in the United States don't necessarily have to be followed by China and Russia and by other places like that. So we could put protections here, but they're you know I my own personal website. I've had multiple hits from Russia and China on my own personal website on things, and I'm sure it's not because they want to read my books or anything like that. So they're very invasive getting into the United States. And it's something you have to remember when it comes to fraud. It's something you have to remember when it comes to credit. You just have to be aware of these things, and develop protections and awareness of these things.
Yes. Well, I was gonna ask, like, you know, your business is it's global rather than just within the nation, or are you just getting it? I don't know, like how big is the scope for the company that you're working for? Does it go global, or is it just with national?
We're kind of becoming national, definitely not global, but it's more. We were originally just the Chicagoland area, and we still are, but we've been recently branching out and doing a lot of things to other states. So what I need to do there is to learn mechanic lien law, for example, in other states. Some of them require that notices be sent out before you even start the project. And, that's very different than we have here in Illinois. So it adds to the amount of research I have to do, the amount of knowledge I have to incorporate. So it's a lot more work, when I'm selling into other states on things. So as we get bigger, my responsibilities tend to get larger as well.
Yeah, and again, everything is just everything moves fast and everything moves forward, and just keeping up with everything and the responsibilities, the technology, the way people interact with each other. If it goes national to global or local to international, all those different things, and it just exponentially grows and moves out forward, and it's cool to see, and it's awesome to see how like the credit industry, especially within like a specific company, handles that and what that looks like, and how you adapt and kind of pivot towards those challenges, and as a team, hopefully conquer them and move on and learn from them. But I wanted to talk more now about a little bit of like designations, like the CCE, that here at NACM Connect, like that we offer like courses and classes to go get your designations and things like that. So why did you get your CCE?
That's a very weird question with me because I originally didn't get into it to put accomplishments on onto my title or anything like that. So I was aware of these things. I was learning things. I was taking classes. Um, then I got to the point where I was teaching classes, and I, I never really thought, that I, it wasn't a goal of mine to do something like that. But then, weirdly enough, uh, when I was already teaching classes and writing and being very involved as a teacher and more of a teacher than a learner at that point, um, I learned that they were going to change the rules on the CCE, so you had to get the CB up first, and you had to get the other two first before you get the CCE. And when I learned that, I decided, well, okay, I better get my CCE because I have the qualifications to do it now, but this would enable me to kind of shortcut it. So it was the last bit of time where you could get the CCE without having the parameters done. So, I mean, you still have to qualify. You still have to have all of the education. You have to have all of the participation, and you still have to take the exam, and you still need to do everything. But what you don't have to do is to get to two previous ones before that. So I figured at that point, it would be a good thing to add to my qualifications so that, especially since I was writing and being involved in it. So people would go, oh, he's certified and he's got addition, he's got a little bit more, it's like with a doctor, if they didn't get their doctorate, you're not going to be, wanting to have that person take care of you. So with the CCE, it was it was the last opportunity to get it without going through more of a system. So I went ahead and I applied for it. I qualified. I took the test. I passed the test. So I got my CCE. At this point now, then once you have your CCE, you have to get continuing education and continuing participation. So you have to keep filing that kind of thing. And I was able to meet those easily because I was teaching classes and writing so much that it was never difficult for me to continue to keep mine up to date on things. But I like having it. I love having it after my name. When I sign something, it does tell people that there's some expertise there. But they need to learn that by what I do as well. So just having the certificate and having the title after your name is one thing, but prove you are that person. And I think with most, with all the people I've known that are CCEs, I think I could say that's true for all of them. So I think it's a very good program.
Yeah, because I think as I've come into NACM Connect, and I had to take credit 101, 102, 103, just as a standard thing that we all have to do here as employees. But then hearing other people like go for their designations, and definitely designations that I haven't heard about before because it is industry specific. But I can definitely see those who, not everyone who doesn't have a CCE doesn't, you know, have what you were talking about, like the expertise. But I do notice those who do have it and put like the full on effort to go get those designations and to continue with the continuing education and be participants within the industry. Um, the way that they are able to just come out and speak on almost any topic, credit industry related or other, and just know how to answer or how to conduct themselves. And so for those who are looking to get designations and do those things, I'm sure Norm would also advocate for, yes, go get it. There is value to that. And as someone who's on the sidelines, capturing the events from NACM Connect or interacting with people who have these designations, I can tell you that they are valuable and definitely worth checking out. But you mentioned writing, and you're writing. I know you are a writer, and you mentioned the writings for NACM for just the industry in general. Or what are some things that you were kind of in the beginning tasked with, or what are maybe the most interesting or fun parts of the writing stuff that you got to do? As I know, again, you are a writer, and that's kind of, I believe, your passion, to do those things. And how does that look like within the industry itself?
Well,
And do you,
I think one of the fun things with writing is it gets to tell me, I get to tell some of the stories of credit. And when I first started writing for NACM, um, the way it happened is it's very important to know the mechanic lien law if you're in construction. And the mechanic lien law is something that makes you a secured lender instead of being an unsecured lender. And a secured lender, that makes you far more protected when it comes to bankruptcies and insolvencies because you have rights against a third party, against the party where your material was put into. So if I'm selling to an electrical contractor who put material into a warehouse somewhere, that they use for construction of the warehouse, I can file a lien on that warehouse. I can file foreclosure on that warehouse. And I'd be going after the owner of the warehouse in addition to going after my customer on things. So it gives you rights that very much make you more secured and better able to collect your money. And if you don't file your liens, you're an unsecured creditor. And if you files a bankruptcy, you're an unsecured creditor. You get nothing. So you want to be a secured creditor. So to understand the lien law, Illinois, for every state has their own lien laws, and these lien laws were all copied from the United States. When the United States created the White House, they passed something called the Miller Act, which gave because people when we first had the United States was not creditworthy, and they said, "Hey, we want to build this White House," and the contractors are saying, "We don't trust you to have the money." So the White House, they passed the Miller Act to give them the right to file liens on things. So all the other states that created their own lien laws that mimicked in some ways, but in some cases were different from the Miller Act. Uh, and they all created their own, and they actually called them Baby Miller Acts, was how they were called. So every state has their own lien laws, and they're all different. Every state is different from each other, but they have a lot of similarities to doing things. So you have to know these things, and state projects are all very similar to the Miller Act in what they do, because in both the Miller Act and for state laws, you can't file a lien against a public entity. You could file a lien against the funds, and you could file a lien against the bond that would have to be provided for the construction of that. But coming back to why I was doing the writing was, now I was in Illinois, and I needed to understand Illinois' mechanic lien law. And there are 39 sections to the lien law, and I learned these sections. And in fact, I was working at a company prior to the company I'm at now, and every Monday we would talk about the lien law, and we would learn the lien law, and learned all 39 sections. When I came to the company I'm at now, we got into, we created a credit group. I'll talk about a credit group later on, but when we all got into the same credit group with all of our competitors, I thought it was important that everybody know the mechanic lien law thoroughly, not just the things that you have, for Illinois, you have to do a preliminary notice of lien within 90 days of your last date of shipment. You have to file a lien within 4 months, and you have to file suit for foreclosure within 2 years. Everybody knows that, but they don't know all the nuances of the lien law, things that you have to make sure you comply with on that. So what I started doing in our credit group was I started teaching that in my own credit group. And I would take each section of the lien law, and whenever we would have monthly meetings, I would teach 1 or 2 sections of that before we did our credit exchange on customers. And as I was doing that, some people, I think it was probably the person who was in charge of our meetings, said that this is really interesting. Could you write an article about this kind of thing for the NACM? But actually, it's called CMCMA at the time. And can you write articles for us on this? And I started writing an article, and I would explain I would explain each section of the lien law. The first article would be section 1, second article is, section number 2. And I would explain it in layman's terms. So I would say, here's what the attorneys say, because, attorneys, they speak different languages than the rest of us do. And I would write about it from a layperson's point of view, and I would have a lot of humor in it, and I would make fun of attorneys, and so that's why attorneys don't like me sometimes, because I like to make fun of them. And so I would write about these each part of the mechanic lien statutes, and I did that for about 3.5 years, and so I hit the 39th part of it. And when I was done, I thought I was done writing the articles, and I was approached again by NACM, and they said, "Can you keep writing them? Can you write about this construction, contract law?" I said, "Sure, absolutely." So I've been continuing that ever since, and it's been now around 16 years or so, 17 maybe.
Wow, yeah. And that's so cool that you use the groups to educate, the people that were in your group about the lien law. Again, as someone who doesn't really know that much, lien law is also one of those things that I definitely don't know a lot about, but I do now, like, as I do the credit connections and compile all the pieces and get in your articles and those little snippets, of a 2-page, article. I learn a little bit more every time, and it is very interesting, especially the stories that you have to tell, and they're very sometimes humorous and definitely interesting and keeps me, engaged. But even from those little snippets, like, I know that I'm being entertained, one, and also being educated. But to know that was something that you felt you needed to take on and educate the people in your groups, is really cool. I think a lot of, when you have a mission or a drive or a goal to get through, and it's crucial, especially for a company or for the companies that they're working for the people to be more well equipped, for the task at hand. Um, I wanted to move really quickly about kind of your unique position, if you're willing to get into that, about where you are today and the way how you're working and the challenges that come with it, but how you're able to still work. And just to go into that for the people who don't know your story, or love for you to be able to have the opportunity to tell that, and however long or detailed as you like.
Well, I know you're asking about what we talked about before. I physically have an issue. When 2019 hit, I went into my doctor. I was a competitive swimmer still, even though I was 60 years old at the time, and I was still swimming, 2 miles every other day, and still swimming competitively. And I went into my doctor for a routine physical exam and had it, and everything was fine. Everything was really good because I've always been extremely healthy. And my doctor asked if I wanted a flu shot, and I said no because I've never had a flu. I've never even had a tooth cavity. That's how healthy I've been in my life. And then she said, "Do you want a shingles vaccine?" And I unfortunately said yes to that. And I immediately after the shot, I mean, within days of the shot, it caused me a lot of nerve issues, and within a month, I was a paraplegic. So I am unable to walk. I cannot use my legs, and it affects my hands as well. This all happened when COVID started. October 2019 was when we were first starting to hear about COVID. And when I came out of the hospital 3 months later, in a wheelchair, uh, COVID was full on. It was full on at that point. So it just took that so COVID and my own physical issues happened at the same time and things. Now, the thing that COVID did as a favor to me was I was no longer able to go into work. I can't go in to meet customers, and I can't do these things anymore. So what COVID did is it made it okay to work from home. And so my employers, they sent me a computer for home. They got me all set up, and I'm able to sit on my desk all day and do my work from home. And COVID is what made that possible to do that. And that's when Zoom started becoming big. Getting because I'm able to do things like what we're doing right here. The podcast and things like that. I could not have done that if it wasn't for that. I probably would have just had to go on a disability or retire or something like that. But instead, I'm extremely active. I probably, I work harder probably than I would if I was driving in because my day doesn't end at 5 o'clock, for me to go off to the pool to swim. Um, I'll be still doing this maybe at 7 o'clock. I might do it on a Sunday. I might be working at other times. So they get more work out of me, and than they would have had this not happen to me. And the results have been very good for our company. We had record collections last year, for example, where best records that we've ever had in my career, for collections. So doing that even as it's becoming a little bit harder to collect money now, as things are getting a little tougher out there. Uh, I can do my job very well here. I can file liens on things. I can do foreclosures on things. I can catch fraud. I can now the thing that it won't allow me to do. I have kind of a fun story. I There was a person that owed money to us one time, and I had a judgment against him, and he was still buying from us. And I learned he was still buying from us. He was buying from us in cash, but he was not paying his judgment. And I went to our salesperson that worked on, that sold him most of the time at the counter. I said, next time this guy shows up, could you let me know? He says, okay, I'll just, but don't tell him that you're letting me know. Just let me know he's here. And he goes, okay. So about a week later, he lets me know, hey, this guy is here, and I said, okay, don't tell him anything. And I went out to my car and sat in my car and I waited for the guy to leave. And when he left, I followed him. And I followed him for about 6 miles, through Chicagoland. So it's kind of hard to keep up with him when it came to lights and things. And he went into a building, which was another kind of distributor, but not in our type. And I waited in the parking lot for an hour for this guy because I figured he's just picking up other material there, for something different. And then it occurred to me that he was maybe working there. He's doing a job for them. So I called my collection agency that had the judgment against him, and I said, I think he's doing a job at this place right here. And my collection guy says, oh, they also use us. Let me call them. So he called them. And then he called me back and he said, yeah, he's doing a job for them. We did a non-wage garnishment against them on that job, and we got paid all of our money. So that's something I could not do today, but I can do it electronically with other tricks and things that I could do to do things. But I could not physically follow somebody the way I did. So that's probably the one thing that I can't do as well now as I could before.
Sounds like the credit manager or the credit individual has some of the most unexpected encounters or experiences compared to what other people I know in different positions and jobs. So again, tell me that you're not like a Batman detective. But it's just very, again, yes, you're now in a weird way, like you're now able to at least still work. You don't have to just give up on all that, and you're able to work. And that's like the one thing COVID gave to us is the ability to work from home and have the tools available and everything. But of course, the very, very unfortunate situation that you're in. But from what I get from our conversations, even off, podcasts, is you're someone who still enjoys living the life that you're living and writing books and working hard and still moving forward, which is find very inspiring, not just for, the sake of a podcast to say these things, but for me personally, I find that very inspiring and just to give no excuse to not continue to do the things that you want to do or need to do. Um, and finding new ways to accomplish those things, like you said, with now that you're maybe not able to go and find out those details firsthand and in person like you once were, but now we have these tools available to help still kind of do the same thing, but in a way that is better for you, or maybe even better for the company, or and whatever it might be. And I'm very thankful that you share that part of your life with me and for those who are listening. And I'm sure also for those who may have known you for a long time, maybe didn't know that part of your life. And I'm just glad to be able to have that conversation with you about it. And I feel like we've had a pretty good conversation, and I learned a lot from you. And for those who don't know, this is my first time ever doing a podcast, and this is the first episode being recorded. It may not be the first one being sent out to Spotify or any of the other platforms, but I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and I hope to have you on again. And for those who are listening, if you have anything for Norm that you want to see in a future episode or have questions, you can let me know down in the comments of whatever podcast platform that you're listening on, or just go to social media and I'll have some posts up there and you can give your thoughts. But Norm, do you have anything last that you want to say or kind of give to the people who are listening, or for me?
Yeah, it's like you live with what you have, and for me, it's been something where I do YouTubes on what it's like to be a paraplegic, and I think some people need to know that we're not just a person in a wheelchair, we're still a person. And I recently wrote a short story that was about a world where everybody was in a wheelchair, and then this boy was growing up and he was able to walk, and they considered him to be handicapped. So, so then they're calling him a freak and everything like that. And so it was, it's look at it differently, and you look at what you can do, not what you can't do. I've written two books were published in the last year that, so me sitting at my desk gives me more time to do things that I wouldn't do normally. I would have been outside mowing the lawn or something. No, I can't do that. I have to have somebody come and mow my lawn. So what do I do then? I'm on my computer. So I'm able to give my work everything that they need from me. And I'm able to I'm able to take care of my dog, so it's just, I'm here for my family. And, so it's, being a paraplegic is something that you live with, but you can live with it. And that's what I'm doing with that. So I really appreciate being part of the credit community still. I'm still, all my friends in the credit community, we see each other on Zoom. So I see everybody there. I still talk to everybody at work. I answer my phone all the time. When people call me, I'm not one of those ones that you call and you don't get an answer and you get a voicemail. I pick up because I'm here to do my job, and I'm here to do, and to be a person. So thank you very much for having me on this and letting me explain this kind of thing. So I think some people need to know it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, hoping to in the future get you on the podcast again, and we can go a little bit more nitty gritty about certain things that maybe people want to hear that you're really passionate about within the credit industry. But that concludes our episode, and as is a first episode to record, it's been an absolute thrill. Thank you so much, Norm.
Thank you. I appreciate it.